On the 10th of July, 2026, a young woman stood on a military airfield in Murcia and closed a chapter that had lasted 3 years, taken her across 2 oceans, put her behind the controls of a fighter jet, and required her to jump out of an airplane. Most people who follow the Spanish royal family know her as the future queen. Fewer people understand exactly what she went through to earn that title, and fewer still understand why a monarchy in the 21st century still insists that its heir go through it at all. This is the story of Princess Leonor's final mission, the true one, the one that actually happened, told through the training records, the ceremonies, and the words of the king himself. Let's start with why this training exists in the first place, because it is not tradition for tradition's sake. Spain's constitution places the monarch at the head of the armed forces. When Leonor becomes queen, she will hold the title of commander-in-chief, the same authority her father holds now. That is not a ceremonial label. It carries the expectation that she understands the institutions she will one day command, from the inside, not from a briefing document. So in March of 2023, Spain's defense minister announced that the heir to the throne would undergo 3 years of military training across all 3 branches. It began that August, when 18-year-old Leonor reported to the General Military Academy in Zaragoza, trading in her school uniform from the UWC Atlantic College in Wales for the uniform of a cadet. The army came first. A full year at Zaragoza, the same academy her father trained at, the same one her grandfather trained at before him. Drills, fieldwork, the standard grind of officer-cadet life, minus none of it for her royal status. Then came the year that, in hindsight, was the true proving ground, the Navy. In January of 2025, Leonor boarded the Juan Sebastián de Elcano, a 4-masted sailing ship, one of the largest tall ships still in operation anywhere in the world, a vessel that has logged more nautical miles than almost any other in history. King Felipe and Queen Letizia traveled to Cadiz to see her off. Before she left, her father addressed her directly at the annual Pascua Militar ceremony, and his words were not the polished language of a press release. He told her that this experience would very likely become one of her best memories from military training, just as it had been for him, and for his father before him. He was speaking, in that moment, less like a monarch and more like a man who understood exactly what his daughter was about to face, because he had faced it too. What followed was 6 months at sea. 17,000 nautical miles. 8 countries. She departed the Canary Islands and crossed the Atlantic toward Brazil, then rounded South America, stopping in Uruguay, Chile, Peru, Panama, Colombia, the Dominican Republic, before making landfall in the United States. She was one of 76 midshipmen aboard, 67 men and 9 women, and she was not given a symbolic role. She stood watches. She studied navigation, astronomy, meteorology, amphibious operations, and seamanship, the same coursework required of every other midshipman on that ship. When the vessel approached Lima, it fired a ceremonial 21-gun salute, and Peru's own Naval Academy answered in kind, a tradition dating back centuries, meant to signal peaceful intent between visiting ships. Leonor stood on deck for that exchange, one future head of state's daughter among a crew that had spent weeks together at sea, sharing the same cramped quarters, the same watch rotations, the same seasickness that comes with months aboard a sailing ship with no engine to smooth out the swells. She disembarked in New York in the summer of 2025, then returned to Spain to formally complete her naval training in Marin, Pontevedra, closing out that phase on July 13 of that year. That brings us to the final year, the one that earns this video its title, because it is here that the physical risk actually escalates. After the Army and the Navy came the Air and Space Force, and with it, the parts of Leonor's training that put her in genuinely dangerous positions for the first time. If you're new here, we cover the Spanish royal family with a strict rule. We verify everything against primary sources before we script a single word, because this niche is flooded with AI-generated fiction dressed up as royal news. If that's the kind of channel you want, hit subscribe, because what's coming next is one of the more remarkable things a royal heir has done in recent memory, and it's entirely real. In the final phase of her training, Leonor entered the General Air and Space Academy in San Javier, Murcia. This is where she learned to fly. Not as a passenger, not in a simulator exclusively, but at the controls of a Pilatus PC-21, a turboprop trainer aircraft used to prepare military pilots for jet transition. She flew solo flights. And in one of the more striking images to come out of her entire training program, she flew in formation alongside her own father, each of them piloting a separate Pilatus PC-21, side by side over the region of Murcia. Think about what that moment actually contains. A sitting monarch and his heir, both certified to fly military aircraft, in the air together, each in command of their own plane. It is difficult to think of a more literal image of a succession being built, not proclaimed, but built, skill by skill, hour by hour. Then came the parachute training, and this is the piece of her final year that most directly earns the word dangerous. At the Alcantarilla Air Base, Leonor completed the basic parachuting course through the Mendez Parada Military Parachuting School, alongside roughly 50 of her academy peers. She learned to execute automatic mode parachute jumps, the same technique used across multiple branches of the Spanish military, including units of the Army, Navy, and Guardia Civil that require jump qualification. This was not a tandem jump strapped to an instructor. This was her, trained, certified, exiting an aircraft under her own preparation and executing the jump according to procedure. Here is what makes that fact matter beyond the thrill of it. Neither her father, King Felipe, nor her grandfather, King Juan Carlos, completed parachute training during their own military educations. Leonor is the first member of the Spanish royal family in history to do so. When you strip away the palace photography and the medal ceremonies, that is the actual headline. A 20-year-old heir to a 400-year-old monarchy became the first person in her family's line to voluntarily jump out of an airplane as part of her preparation to lead a nation. It's worth pausing here to be precise about what we mean by dangerous, because clickbait versions of this story love to imply some kind of secret hazard, a hidden threat, a mission gone wrong. That's not what happened, and we're not going to pretend otherwise just to manufacture drama. The danger here is the real, physical danger inherent in military flight and parachute training itself, the same danger every cadet in that program accepts, full stop. There was no scandal. There was no cover-up. There was a young woman doing the same demanding, genuinely risky training that thousands of Spanish military cadets do every year, except she happened to be a princess, and she happened to be the first in her family to choose the hardest optional path available to her. Because it was optional. In a sense, nothing in Spain's constitution specifically requires a parachute qualification. The 3 years of cross-branch training, yes, that follows from her constitutional role. But the parachute course, the fighter jet formation flight, those were choices made within that framework, and by all accounts, choices Leonor pursued with visible enthusiasm rather than reluctance. If you've been enjoying this deep dive, this is exactly the kind of verified, no-fluff royal coverage this channel exists to make, so consider subscribing if you haven't. We're not interested in manufacturing controversy. We're interested in telling you what actually happened, with sources you could check yourself. Let's talk about how it ended. On July 10, 2026, Leonor's training closed at the General Air and Space Academy in San Javier. The ceremony was not a small one. King Felipe, in his capacity as Captain General of Spain's Armed Forces, personally promoted his daughter to the rank of Junior Naval Officer, the formal title conferred for completing this stage. She also received the rank of Cadet Lieutenant, a designation tied to finishing her academic cycle at the Air and Space Academy. The honors that came with it tell their own story. She was awarded the Grand Cross of Aeronautical Merit with White Distinction, an honor her father received in 1988 when he completed his own training at that same academy, in that same location, decades earlier. She had already received the Military and Naval Merit Crosses during earlier phases of her training, so this final award completed what amounts to a full trifecta of Spain's military honors, one from each branch she trained in. And the region of Murcia awarded her its own highest civilian distinction, the Gold Medal of the region, along with naming her an adopted daughter of the region, a recognition of the bond she'd built with the local community over her time stationed there. Her sister, Infanta Sofia, was there for it. It marked their first public appearance together since welcoming Pope Leo XIV to Spain the previous month, and by most accounts, the day carried a genuine, visible emotion, a sister watching a sister close out one of the most demanding chapters of her life. Queen Letizia was there too, and for those tracking these things, she wore a pastel pink cap-sleeved dress for the celebratory occasion, a small detail, but one that photographers and royal watchers noted as a departure from the more severe formality that's often surrounded these ceremonies. So what actually was the most dangerous test in Leonor's final mission? If we're being precise, and precision is the whole point of this channel, it wasn't any single dramatic event. It was the accumulation of them. Months at sea on a vessel with no engine to fall back on, in weather that doesn't care about royal status. Formation flying at the controls of a military trainer aircraft, a discipline that has ended careers and worse for pilots far more experienced than a 20-year-old cadet. And parachute jumps that made her the first in her family's history to accept that particular risk. None of that was manufactured for a headline. All of it is documented, photographed, and confirmed by multiple sources, including the Spanish royal household itself. What comes next for her is almost the opposite kind of challenge. In September of 2026, Leonor will trade her cadet uniform for a University one, enrolling in political science at the Getafe campus of Carlos III University in Madrid. It's a deliberate pairing, 3 years of physical and institutional military discipline followed by an academic grounding in the political theory and structures she'll need to understand as a constitutional monarch. Her father followed a similar pattern in his own preparation, and it's not hard to see the same architecture being applied to her, adjusted for a different era, but built on the same idea, that a monarch's authority in Spain's system rests on demonstrated competence, not just birthright. There's a version of royal content, and you've probably encountered it if you've spent any time in this niche, that would have taken a title like Leonor's final mission and invented some hidden danger, some secret sabotage, some crisis behind closed doors. We didn't need to, because the real story was already more compelling than anything invented. A future queen who flew in formation with the reigning king. Who jumped from a plane when no one in her family's history ever had. Who spent 6 months on the open ocean learning to read the stars for navigation the same way sailors have for centuries. That's not embellishment. That's the record. If this kind of grounded, source-checked royal coverage is what you come here for, subscribe, because Leonor's next chapter, the political science years, the questions about her role expanding, the ongoing relationship with her sister as heir and non-heir navigate very different public lives, all of that is coming, and we'll be covering it the same way we covered this, verified first, dramatized never. Thanks for watching.